Pogo given room to turn in that position, which is unusual. Now Paddon with a chance to set it up on his left foot. And swinging away from the goalkeeper.
There was a time when his left foot could do anything. Send the ball 40 yards into the top corner, swing a cross that cut through silence like a blade, turn big nights into ruins, one strike at a time. Graham Paddon didn't chase applause. He chased the game, and for a few years, he caught it. With power, with elegance, and with something the game itself never fully gave back: respect. He helped clubs rise. He left his mark on names bigger than his own. He lifted trophies. He changed matches in Europe with a single touch. But then the game did what it always does when it's finished with someone like him. It moved on. He was sold before he was ready, moved when he was still needed, snapped in two when he came home, ignored when the national side called others, and when he disappeared quietly in the end, there was no thunder, no parade, no gold-trimmed send-off, just silence. The same silence that followed him through every door he walked out of. Too soon, too often. This isn't about what might have been. This is about what was, and how the game let it all fade. If you remember what it felt like to watch a left foot speak louder than words, subscribe. Because we remember Graham Paddon, even if the game never really did. Graham Charles Paddon was born on the 24th of August, 1950 in Manchester, raised not in glory, but in grit. He didn't need noise to stand out. He played with a left foot that already whispered danger, long before the shirts got heavy. There was a looseness to his stride, a calm in the way he struck the ball. He didn't look like a fighter, but he made the pitch feel like one. Coventry City saw something early. He came through as an apprentice under Noel Cantwell, earned his debut in 1969, and scored. First division football, one of the youngest on the pitch, but the ball didn't care about age. It moved when he told it to. It felt like the start of something. But the game had other plans. 5 league appearances, 1 goal, no crisis, no failure. Then, sold. October 1969. Norwich City, £25,000. Not for mistakes, just for money. No goodbye, no fight to keep him. Just an envelope and a door. He hadn't even arrived. And they moved him on. Coventry didn't wait to find out what he might become. They saw the value on paper and called it done. It was his first real lesson, and it cut deep. Sometimes it's not a fall that ends you. It's being priced before you've even risen. Norwich wasn't a step down. It was the place where Graham Paddon finally found space to breathe. They didn't ask him to wait his turn. They gave him the ball, and the freedom to break patterns. Under Ron Saunders, he became the kind of midfielder who didn't just link play. He dragged matches forward, from midfield to the box, from pressure to momentum. By the time the 1971-72 season ended, Norwich were champions of the second division. Paddon was everywhere. Tackles, switches, crosses, goals. He scored 8 league goals, each one louder than the last. Not bad for someone Coventry cashed in before they'd even watched him grow. But the real war came next season. 1972-73, League Cup, quarter-final. Highbury. Arsenal. Names like Frank McClintock, Charlie George, John Radford, all standing on their own turf, all expecting to roll over Norwich. But Graham Paddon didn't show up to be humbled. He showed up to break something. And he did. Hat-trick. Highbury silenced. 3 goals that left legends frozen and the London press scrambling to explain. No screaming. No chest pounding. Just a quiet lad from Manchester reminding Arsenal that class doesn't always come in a fashionable kit. Then came Chelsea in the semi-final, beaten across 2 legs. Then Tottenham in the final. Norwich falling short, but Paddon still shining under Wembley's lights. He never said much. But after that winter, there were 3 men in North London who remembered his name far more vividly than they ever wanted to. That was the thing about Graham Paddon. He didn't need to fight with words. He just picked the biggest names in the room and made sure they never forgot the day he passed through. In December 1973, West Ham United made their move. They wanted presence, range, intelligence. They wanted someone who could make the game move differently, and they paid for it. £170,000, a club record at the time. A straight deal, Ted McDougall to Norwich, Graham Paddon to Upton Park. It was a statement, not just money, belief. He didn't arrive with noise. He arrived with calm authority, sliding into midfield with that same left foot, ready to strike shape and command. And within 2 years, the gamble paid off. 1974-75, FA Cup, West Ham surged. Paddon was in every match, every moment. In the final at Wembley, it was his strike, hit low, fierce, aimed like a question, that forced Fulham's Peter Mellor to spill. Alan Taylor pounced. Goal, glory, silver. He didn't lift the cup with flash, he just stood in the middle of it all, calm as ever, a man who had done his job. And then came Europe. Cup Winners' Cup, 1975-76. West Ham carved their way to the final. In the semi-final, away to Eintracht Frankfurt, the moment came. Paddon from 30 yards, no hesitation. It flew like a threat. Goal. He didn't celebrate with fire, he just turned, jogged back, another job done. They made the final, Anderlecht, but this time it slipped. A controversial penalty, a cold night, and a medal that never quite felt right. Somewhere in the middle of all that, Wembley, Wolves, Frankfurt, his name should have risen into folklore. But football doesn't always let the architect keep the house. Within months, after all the glory, all the delivery, he was moved on. No scandal, no failure, just football's old rule. You can be the difference. And still be told you're no longer required. The final was supposed to complete him. Cup Winners' Cup, 1976. West Ham versus Anderlecht, a European medal on the line, one last chance to crown what he'd built. Paddon had been one of the engines behind the run. He had scored from 30 yards in Frankfurt. He had kept West Ham ticking through the chaos. He had earned his place. But that night in Brussels something shifted. Anderlecht were good, but they were also helped. A controversial penalty, soft and sudden, gave them a foothold, and West Ham never recovered. The match slipped. The medal went the other way, and once again, Paddon stood in the centre of it all. The man who had done enough and left with nothing. That would have hurt on its own. But what followed was colder. He'd just won the FA Cup, just played in a European final, just carried a midfield that had broken through every barrier. And yet, England never called, not properly. A single cap at U23 level, one goal, no full senior recognition. Not even when the midfield shirts were being handed out like favours. He didn't complain. But the silence was deafening. He had played the biggest matches in England. He had scored under lights the rest of the team could barely stand up in. And still, overlooked. Forgotten. This was the beginning of the second wound. Not being sold, not being injured, being ignored. Football will forgive mistakes. It will even honour failure if it's loud enough. But it has no ceremony for the men who were brilliant in silence. And for Graham Paddon, the silence only got louder. He came back to Norwich like it meant something. Like home had remembered him. Like maybe the game had too. November 1976, £110,000. Still in his prime. Still with enough fire in the legs to shift games. They welcomed him back with expectation. He was no longer a prospect. He was the man who had beaten Arsenal, lifted a trophy, scored in Europe. Now back in yellow. To lead, to finish what he started. It lasted 3 games. Sunderland, a clash, a collision. And the sound that every footballer knows before the doctors say it. His leg, broken. The same leg that had launched throw-ins like rockets. The same leg that had silenced Highbury. The same leg that had chased a European medal in Brussels. Now it just lay still. Another career thrown into a waiting room. He was out for a year. Not just healing, but watching. Watching games from the stands. Watching others take minutes. Watching the rhythm go where he couldn't reach. He came back, eventually. Fought his way in, took the captain's armband, tried to wear the weight like it still fit. But something had shifted. He could still pass, still think 3 steps ahead. But the pace, the drive, the edge that once made defences panic, it never truly returned. He was still valuable, still respected. But the spark that made him feared had been left on that pitch in Sunderland, and deep down, he must have known. When a body turns on you, the game starts to follow. When the legs begin to question you, you don't walk away. You look for the next patch of grass that will still have you. For Graham Paddon, the game wasn't over. Not yet. But it was no longer offering centre stage. In 1978, he crossed the Atlantic. A short-term escape. A softer light. Tampa Bay Rowdies in the NASL. He played alongside old friends, faced old rivals under palm trees instead of floodlights. He even scored 5 league goals. And in one surreal moment, he faced Norwich in a friendly, and scored against the club he had once carried to glory. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like football trying to forget him and him refusing to vanish. He came back to England, had a quiet spell at Millwall, 5 games, 1 goal. Then he drifted further into the edges. Hong Kong, Eastern AA, different weather, different fans, same heartbeat. The ball still moved for him, but the spotlight never followed. Eventually it was non-league, Alfreton Town, where the cameras didn't go. He turned out in midfield for 29 matches, played like it still mattered, because for him, it always did. There were no grand farewells, no moment where the game stood up and clapped him off the pitch. He just played, for as long as someone would hand him a shirt. Because for some players, it's not about titles or final bows. It's about staying close to the game, even as it quietly drifts away. When the boots were done, he didn't walk away. He did what football asks of its faithful. He carried on, off the pitch in the shadows, clipboard in hand. Coaching wasn't a new dream. It was the only way left to stay inside the thing that once ran through his blood. He began at Portsmouth, under Alan Ball, a manager he respected. From there, the trail twisted. Stoke City. Ball took him there as his assistant. But football's loyalty has a short shelf life. Ball was sacked, and suddenly Paddon wasn't second in command. He was caretaker manager of a broken team. Stoke finished 14th in the 3rd division, the lowest point in their league history. And though he did what he could, the damage had been done long before he held the reins. He didn't stay. He went back to Portsmouth, under Jim Smith, trying to rebuild something from the assistant's chair. In 1995, they were both sacked again. No legacy, no statue in the dugout, no narrative around his coaching mind. Just names on a staff list, easily replaced, quietly removed. He kept working. He scouted for Derby, Liverpool, Leicester. Always watching, always recommending. Never the one being called for TV, never the one on the banner. In the early 2000s, he took a job far from England. Brunei, DPMM FC, coaching in a country where no one asked about Wembley, or Highbury, or Sunderland. Just another assignment. Another job. Another flight into silence. For all his experience, FA Cup, Europe, captaincy, goals, pain, the game never truly let him sit still. It used him, respected him, but it never truly held him. Because men like Graham Paddon are always seen as useful, until they're not. He didn't die on a pitch. There was no final whistle, no commentary line, no crowd to carry his name into the evening. He died quietly, at home, near Great Yarmouth, on the 19th of November 2007. A heart attack. He was 57 years old. Not young. Just another reminder that football doesn't always give its people the time they deserve. There were no headlines. Just tributes from the clubs that remembered. West Ham, Norwich, the few that had truly seen what he gave. He left behind a wife and 3 children, a son, 2 daughters, and a career that spanned hundreds of matches, 5 decades, 3 continents, and still never found a permanent home. 469 league appearances, 43 goals. FA Cup winner, European finalist, captain, playmaker, architect. He never got a full England cap. He never became a household name. But he left marks, deep ones, in places where others were celebrated just for showing up. Highbury still remembers. Norwich still sings softly. And West Ham. West Ham still knows what he did at Wembley. He never asked for fanfare. Just once they asked him to name his best goal, and he said it simply. The 40-yarder I hit against Wolves, the wind helped it. That was the best I ever scored. That was Graham Paddon. No exaggeration, no fuss, just facts and scars. This wasn't a farewell. It was the game looking the other way, and him walking off the pitch one final time, unseen. If you still care about the players they forgot, if you still believe the game owes something to those it quietly erased, subscribe. Because if their names aren't spoken here, they won't be spoken anywhere.